The first time I tried to record this, I did not have my microphone on. So this is take two, and I had some good examples of what I was talking about in this game, so I'm just going to play it. A few days ago, I got some coaching, and the main takeaway that I got was that I play pro like a Splattershot, which makes sense given my history of the game. And specifically what they were talking about was my tendency to run at people to try and fight them, whereas they think that pro ought to play more like a turret beaming people with its max range. Pro is this weird hybrid between a shooter and a like fighting midline. It does not have the same tools to fight people like other weapons do. What it does have, so like compared to other weapons that have a lot of range, like bucket, stamper, like 96, pro's pre-fire is much more steady and consistent. So bucket and stamper have a lot of time in between their shots, obviously, like so they're just not able to consistently pre-fire and like zone people out. Obviously they can zone people out if they hit their shots, but if they don't hit their shots, like that creates a window for the opponents to get in and potentially kill them. So a lot of the time as those weapons, you just have to play a bit more carefully because you are susceptible to rush down. Versus pro, like you just saw here, like I could just stand at my max range and beam that guy and there's nothing he can do. And then 96 cal is also better at pre-firing than Stamper than Bucket. Real quick, like there I tried to run into that guy's range and I ended up dying for it. If I just backed up, I would have been fine. 96 is better at pre-firing than like non-shooter midlines. But because its fire rate is slower than pros and because its accuracy is much worse than pros, it is worse at it than pro is. It's a little bit more susceptible to getting rushed down. But pro can just like here, I can just, like I see the blaster is coming here and I can just sit here and shoot at this and the blaster will never be able to get up. There's just nothing the blaster can do. I'm outside its max range. Like pro in lobbies where you outrange all of the enemy's weapons, which doesn't happen too often, but like when it does happen, pro is just god. Like pro can run the lobby. There, if I had camped the jump from a little bit further, I wouldn't have died because there would have been like not much the wiper could have done about me. So yeah, part of the reason that I tend to run in to try and fight people so much with shot is that I feel unable to hold space against weapons like Stamper. Like look at that range, that's nutty. Like if there's a Stamper or a Bucket or a 96 watching me when I'm on shot, I feel that in many situations, unless I have teammates with me, there is not much I can do and I'm just going to lose space. So it's like if I sit there and let them do their thing, I'll lose space. So I have to be threatening to like push up into them to like make them not want to go forward. I need to like move in and fight them and kill them so that they don't take space from me. Or I just back up and I do take that space, and I just rely on my teammates to hold space. I feel that way with pro because pro does get outranged and like outpoked by Stamper by like 96, and so my instincts for shot kick in where like I want to push up and fight them. But what I was told and what makes sense to me in my mind is that like because pro has more range, like look at this, what is the wiper supposed to do? Because pro has more range than shot does, it is more able to threaten Stamper and 96 and Bucket and those kinds of weapons for pushing up. Because again, like they are a bit susceptible to rush down, but because shot's range is so small, like the amount of space that the shot needs to, like the gap that shot needs to close is big enough that like those weapons have a lot of leeway into zoning out shot. whereas they have much less leeway in zoning out Pro because Pro has less ground to cover in order to get into its range. So Pro is just better at, like, these weapons can zone out and like box out Pro and take space from them, especially in big open areas. But like especially if you're playing cover, you can control a lot of space with Pro and like, or you can hold space with Pro against weapons in ways that you can't with Shot. I was talking to Atlas about how he felt in the Stamper versus Pro matchup, so I could like try and like flip that to see how I should be playing Pro into him, or into Stampers. And the main thing he said was that like, if Pro is playing smart around cover, it's really difficult for Stamper to push it, and so a lot of the time Stamper can kind of just, or Pro can kind of just ignore Stamper. Where like if I just play around cover and I focus on zoning out the enemies, like the other enemies, like blasters that are going to be able to fight me around cover, it's difficult for the sword to be able to do things into me. So if I play to live, it's very difficult for the Pro to kill me. But if I play to try and kill the sword, and I do like end up having to fight it out in these open areas because I do not, like I don't have AoE, I am a line of sight weapon. He said a good sword will always just be able to kite you back because they outrange you, and like 9 times out of 10 you should lose the fight. So, and I think that probably applies in the same way to Pro versus 96, Pro versus Blaster, Pro versus Bucket, where like if you play to kill the enemy, that you might kill them, but it's, and obviously context matters a lot, and there are a lot of situations where you should ego fight people, but it's like if you play to run in and ego fight people, that a lot of the time, because Pro doesn't have as many powerful 1v1 tools as other weapons do, that'll just create like a favorable opportunity for them to kill you. So maybe you get the kill, maybe you die, but if you play chill, like play safe, play around cover and like threaten to zone them out, or like threaten to dive them to like make them taking space from you really uncomfortable, you probably won't kill them unless they make a mistake, in which case you do kill them. Great, like we saw last game with like the Blaster trying to fight me. We don't need to look at this, avert your eyes. But a lot of the, so what was I saying? Sorry, I'm really rambly. I swear I took my meds. If you play to live, they can't kill you. If you play to kill, they will probably be able to kill you. And that kind of segues into the next thing I talk about, which is like, it's really okay to not make anything happen with a lot of shooters. So earlier I talked about how I, like in my mind, Pro is this weird hybrid between a shooter and a fighting midline. And these are obviously all like arbitrary labels. I more so mean like the gameplay role that shooters fulfill generally versus the like gameplay role that fighting midlines fulfill, or like the vibe of the weapons. So weapons like Squeezer are very good at fighting. Weapons like Blaster are very good at fighting. Stamper, Bucket, etc. But these weapons are not amazing at painting. They're not always the best at holding space. Like I said, like Stamper can potentially be very susceptible to rushdown, same with Bucket. They're not always the best at painting. Like, Bucket is going to get a lot of paint in a game, but that paint is not going to be as fast as a short-range shooter's paint. And maybe I'll talk about painting in another video, but so like they're not as fast at like creating and maintaining paint. And often their specials are not as good. Now that's like with a lot of the good weapons in the meta, that thing about specials isn't quite true. Like we have Booyah on Stamper, we have Strikes on Bucket, we have Booyah on S-Blast, although you don't see that as much. But like, so yeah, so like Stamper can get a lot of paint, but this paint is just not the same paint as an NZAP doing this. Right. Um, so there are fighting midlines that do have good specials, but things like 52 gal, which I do think of less as a short range shooter and more as a fighting midline, has whale, which is not bad, but is not as impactful as things like missiles, booyah, crab, strikes, the old Zuka, not anymore, but and that's part of why shot isn't as good anymore, but I'll get to that later. Blaster has bubble, but you're not going to get that. Like you see splashdown more, and splashdown is not the most impactful special. Squeezer is getting like 2 Zukas a game. That is not particularly impactful. Before Inkfat rose in popularity, you mostly saw this one with Kraken, which is not the most impactful special. I'm sure that we would see more Jet Squelcher if it had something other than Splashdown. Like, a lot of the strong fighting weapons do not have particularly impactful specials. Zipcaster, Rain, Kraken, not that great. Wavebreaker, Zuka, not that great. Missiles are solid. So the consequence of that is that these weapons, Screen, Inkjet, Mist, Zuka, Kraken, Blob, or Kraken, Rain. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. A consequence of this is that these weapons need to fight more to get value. So the idea is like, if I am a shot and I'm fighting a blaster, the blaster has so many tools to kill me. Like it's crazy. Blaster is very good at killing. It's not going to be painting the map very much. It's not going to be getting its special very much, and the special it does get is not going to be very impactful. So if I am fighting the blaster, it depends a lot on the situation, of course. But if I am fighting the blaster as a shot, they will probably have the advantage. Very, 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 very context dependent, but generally. Like, it outranges shot. What is this? Maybe if I jump, I can kill if I jump, but jumping is super bad for shooters. So the blaster has to kill me, because that's what the blaster does. The blaster is good at killing, it's bad at painting, it's bad at having a good special and getting a lot of it. Shooters are comparatively worse at killing. They are still, of course, very good at killing. This is, from the ink, it is 25 frames to kill. That is quite good. But comparatively, they are worse at killing. But the trade-off is that they have a lot of paint. And then Zuka's not amazing, but imagine it was old Zuka, or imagine I'm playing Splash with Crab, I'm playing T-Tech with Strikes, I'm playing Zap with Cooler. You are getting a lot of your special, and it's a good special. So if the blaster kills me, then I'm dead, and that sucks, and that's how the blaster wins. If the blaster doesn't kill me, then over time, the map is going to turn more and more into my color. And I'm going to be getting a special in like 20 seconds. It's not unreasonable to see short-range shooters get a special in 10-15 seconds on the opening when there is a lot of paint for them to paint. Often when there isn't, it's going to be like 15, or it's going to be like 20-30 seconds. But that's a lot of specials. Like 2 specials a minute in a full match is going to be like 10 specials. And you don't see people get that because you're going to die sometimes. You're going to be like fighting instead of painting at certain times. Things are going to go wrong. Sometimes you're going to be holding your special for the right time to use it. But like, in theory, you can be getting 10 specials a game if you're just not dying. So blasters have to kill you. Like the bucket has to kill you, right? or you just win. You get so much more passive value simply by being alive than other weapons that get a lot of value from fighting get. So it creates that relationship where I will not be able to kill a stamper. Like if that's a stamper, or say that's a stamper, I'm never going to be able to kill them here. Like, assuming it's a good stamper. Because if I run at them and they hit their shot, then I will die. And if I run at them and they miss their shot and then they just start swimming backwards, then like it's not going to be good. I'm never going to win the fight. But if I sit back here, it's going to be really uncomfortable for them to push me, because I'll be able to be like pre-firing them as they like try and swing. If they like are like at any point I threaten to randomly swing and start shooting, and they don't have the ability to pre-fire me as like clean and consistent as weapons like Pro are able to. It's very awkward for the stamper to push me. So I can't kill them, but they can't kill me. But that's okay, because I'm the shooter, right? Like, I'm going to be getting a lot of paint in this area. I'm going to be getting my Booyah Bomb. It's like I'm chilling. It is okay to not make anything happen. If I try and fight the stamper, and I'm just playing the stamper's game at that point, you know what I mean? Like if I kill them, great, but it's probably a favorite fight for them, and they have to kill me, so why would I give them the opportunity to kill me? Now, like I said, Pro is a bit of a hybrid between like these shooters that have a ton of paint and really high special output, and these fighting weapons. It is much more capable of fighting things than Shot is. Like, this range is, for me as a Shot player, this is a blissful amount of range. But for me as a Shot player, this paint is kind of miserable. So it is a weapon that paints worse than short-range shooters and fights worse than fighting midlines. But it paints better than fighting midlines, and it fights better than short-range shooters. And so the consequence of that is that in the matchups versus those long-range weapons, you are able to play chill and safe and passive, and just farm for your special. And in matchups against short-range shooters, you are able to abuse your range to just like completely push them out and outfight them. And real quick, while I'm here, like, the fact that you have more fighting power, especially in the ways that Pro has fighting power, doesn't mean, like, it doesn't actually mean that you should be fighting more. It does generally mean that in a lot of situations. Like if I'm trying to paint zone and there's a splash trying to paint zone, I'm never going to outpaint them, so I need to go and fight them. But it doesn't always mean that you need to be fighting more, because the ways in which Pro has fighting power means that it is able to hold space for itself a lot better. So like, and I've already talked about this, but like, if that's a blaster, it outranges me, so I either back up, and I'm never going to be able to kill it as I back up, and I just give it all of the space, or I run in and I try and fight it. Like try and dodge its shot, get inside its range, make it awkward for it, and use my DPS to kill it before it can two-shot me. Pray it doesn't direct me. If I'm a Pro, I can just shoot it. And if it moves towards me, I move a little bit backwards. And then I can still shoot it. And if it moves away from me, I move a little bit forwards, and I'm slowly taking space. So like, the fact that I have this range doesn't mean I need to go and fight. It means actually I'm perfectly comfortable sitting back painting, because I have the range to fight people if they try and take space from me. It's like, oh yeah, holding space is just being like, if you move into the space, I'll kill you. And so the better a weapon's fighting power, asterisk, the better it is at holding space. So like, that's why, in my humble opinion, Sploosh and Aerospray kind of suck, because they just don't have the fighting power to hold space. Like, at the point where you are consistently getting outfought by a splash, I don't think your weapon is very good. I mean, yeah, if the weapon is getting outfought by a splash, like there are some truly cracked splash players, and splash is a lot better at fighting than everybody in low level thinks it is, but I digress. Pro having this range means that other weapons have to be careful about how they approach it, so it means it is able to hold space in ways that aren't as true for weapons like shot, and so even though you have more fighting power, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be fighting more. Like if anything, pro's range enables its passivity. Oh yeah, and then like it's also the ways in which pro has fighting power, right? And like we talked about earlier, like the pro has a very stable beam, a relatively good fire rate, quite bad compared to short range shooters. I believe it's 8 frames in between shots, but quite good compared to a ranged blaster that is 60 frames in between shots, right? Like, there are weapons with more fighting power than pro that are not as capable of holding space because they have a harder time stopping people from running them down, like rapid blaster, like stamper. If these weapons hit their shots like 100% of the time, then they have a 1000% more holding power than pro does, but they don't. You can't stably pre-fire this. It doesn't. Yeah. So like it's not just that pro has fighting power; it's the ways in which it has fighting power. And so like the ways in which it has fighting power do not enable it to run at people to the same extent that like Stamper is actually similar to pro in the sense that it doesn't love running at people, but it at least has a burst bomb if you're playing that kit. And even if you aren't, it has that one shot that makes it a little bit better at running at people. Blasters have the direct that make them better at running at people. Squeezer has a wall that helps it run at people. 52 Gal obviously is capable of running at people because of its time to kill, and its wall also helps a lot with that. So the ways in which pro is better at fighting compared to short range shooters do allow it to run at people in ways that short range shooters can't, but it also can't. There are ways in which short range shooters can run at people that pro isn't as good at. Like if you force a close range fight with pro, that doesn't always benefit you. But against weapons like Stamper, Bucket, Squeezer, you're going to get outranged. So like if you are going to run in and fight them, you have to force the close range fight, but they have the range and they can kite you to make it so that it's not super effective. And even if you close the gap, you aren't that much better at fighting them. Whereas if you were a shot and you close the gap, you are quite a bit better at fighting them. So like pro's strengths just make it not really want to run at people, not very good at running at people, but it makes it very good at sitting back and having this long range beam pre-fire, stop people from pushing it. And then on top of that, it has good paint output and a Booyah Bomb. So like it is very good at it likes sitting back and zoning people out. Like that's part of the big problem with Blob, right? One of the big problems with Blob is that Blob is like wants to be sitting back and zoning people out, but then it doesn't have specials to be like actually worth sitting back and zoning people out for. It's like you ignore the Blob and then the Blob doesn't do anything, and it's like, well, okay. Versus if you ignore the pro, then like the pro gets a Booyah Bomb, like multiple a game, and so it's hard to just ignore it. Pro is also like its range and the fact that it is a shooter, so like you can be very fluid and very active, and it having this range means that it's very good at cross-firing off of teammates and like popping up and helping teammates in fights. So that is like another advantage of sitting back and playing a bit more passive, playing to your range, is you are able to like the nature of the weapon makes it more effective at capitalizing on opportunities, as opposed to weapons like a Splattershot, which is going to take longer to join a fight, like a Bucket, which is going to be a bit clunkier to join a fight because it can't move and shoot and move and shoot as fast as Pro can. So that is like another reason why Pro is good at sitting back and playing a bit more passive. That, by the way, is part of why I think that, like, I don't really think of Gal as a shooter in the way that or not to the same extent that I think of it as a fighting midline, because Gal's paint is actually pretty solid. And the fact that it has this wall, and the fact that it has its two-shot, means that it is quite good at holding space, much better than a lot of other weapons. And the fact that it has shooter mobility like helps a lot with that too. But the reason you don't see Gal picked in the slot that you might see a Shot or Splash or Zap picked is just because its special isn't that good. Like, Whale is not bad, don't get me wrong, but it's not as impactful as the other, like as your Booyah, as your Strikes, as your Missiles, as your Crabs. And so Gal just doesn't get as much from sitting back and holding space as these other weapons do, and so it wants to fight more. Like, the fact that it has the specials it does, I think are a very... I think Gal's special choice is very intentional from the game designers to incentivize it to fight, and it is one of the main things keeping Gal balanced. We can argue that Gal is not balanced. I think there are very fair arguments for that. I will talk about it in another video, but for now, like, the fact that Gal doesn't have good specials is a very important thing, because specials are very important to a weapon's identity, particularly for shooters, and particularly for Pro. The fact that Pro has Booyah, the fact that it has its long-range pre-fire, and very consistent shots, high damage, high mobility, mean that it is very, and like a good paint output, mean that it is very comfortable sitting back and playing passive in ways, and like holding space in situations where weapons like Shot could not hold space, and Shot, if it wanted to hold onto space, would need to force a fight and hope that it is able to kill the enemy. And so Pro is just able to play in ways that Shot cannot, in terms of playing passive, playing to your range, playing to hold space. And so Pro is very much not a Splattershot, and I need to start playing it like a Pro and not like a Splattershot. Sorry, I know that was all very repetitive. I'm not very good at this. I hope this helps you see how much editing had to go into the long form videos that I've made, which is why I don't really have the energy to make them. Watching, and I appreciate you sitting through this if you did make it to the end. Thank you so much for watching. That is all from me for now, and I will see you next time.